Today, we're tackling a really big what if. What if Germany had actually won World War II? It's a scenario historians have thought about for ages.
It really is. And it's chilling, but thinking about it helps us see just how much hinged on the actual outcome, how different things could be.
Right. So we've gathered analyses looking at exactly this. Our aim, to dig into the specifics, what the world might genuinely look like under Axis rule. Politics, economics, culture.
Technology, even the fate of specific groups and nations, it's about understanding those huge turning points in history, how fragile our present reality actually is.
Okay, so let's start with how Germany could have won. According to these sources, they point to some major strategic mistakes.
Yeah, critical errors.
The invasion of the Soviet Union, Operation Barbarossa, that's always cited as a massive one. Was it the invasion itself or the timing?
Well, that's key, isn't it? The sources really emphasize the timing. Going in June 41, essentially before they were fully, truly ready.
Overstretched.
Massively. It drained resources, bogged them down. What might have been a quick campaign turned into this grinding war of attrition on the Eastern Front. Timing and readiness, even for them, were critical.
And another point the sources raise is Germany not declaring war on the United States. That feels counterintuitive, maybe?
It does seem strange looking back, but Hitler's specific choices there, they kept the U.S. initially focused elsewhere, or at least delayed their full entry into the European theater.
A different decision could have changed the whole power dynamic.
Absolutely. Imagine the war without America's full industrial might thrown in against Germany from relatively early on. It's a game changer.
Okay, and early in the war, Dunkirk, 1940. The halt order, that comes up a lot too.
Oh, definitely. Stopping the tanks there allowed, over 330,000 Allied troops to escape?
Right, the British Expeditionary Force, mostly.
Exactly. If the Blitzkrieg had just rolled on, captured that force, Britain might have been knocked out or severely weakened right then. A huge what-if moment.
So let's imagine those moments went differently. Germany wins. What does the world actually look like then? The sources paint a really, really bleak picture.
Yeah, bleak is putting it mildly. Politically, the whole global structure is shattered. Germany controls Europe, a new German empire, basically.
The other nations just...
Satellites, pretty much, yeah. Italy would dominate North Africa. Japan takes charge of Asia, including places like Indonesia. The existing world order, gone.
Right.
Replaced by just raw, brutal dominance.
And the U.S. What happens to America in this scenario?
The sources suggest maybe isolation, or maybe even worse, fragmentation. Parts potentially controlled by Germany or Japan, certainly not the post-war superpower we know, really makes you think about how power could have been concentrated.
And the society within this new order, this is where it gets truly terrifying reading these analyses.
It really is. Nazi racial ideology goes global. The Aryan race declared supreme, Western Europeans may be a step below.
In your whole life, your value depends on where you fall on this horrific made-up ladder.
Exactly. And for those deemed inferior or lowest races, well, the consequences are unthinkable. We're talking about the Lebensraum idea, ethnic cleansing, colonization applied globally.
Extermination on a massive scale. People with disabilities, homosexuals, Jewish people.
Systematically targeted for eradication. No room for diversity, for pluralism. Just total ideological control. Media, schools, everything forced into the Nazi mold. It's not just about stopping opposition, it's about remaking humanity itself.
And this wasn't just theory. The sources point to how Hitler consolidated power inside Germany, the Enabling Act, the Night of Long Knives.
Right, those brutal purges and power grabs.
That becomes the global template. Imagine that level of fear and repression as the worldwide standard.
And it likely wouldn't even be a peaceful tyranny. The sources suggest constant conflict. Think about the former Soviet areas, Russia, Ukraine, becoming this endless drain.
A graveyard for soldiers and resources, as one analysis put it.
Yeah, endless guerrilla war. Maybe quietly backed by an isolated U.S. generations growing up in constant, simmering conflict. Not exactly a stable world order.
So with that political and social setup, built on racial hate and fear, what happens to the global economy? It must be completely transformed.
Oh, unrecognizable. IMF, the World Bank, they'd likely be dismantled.
Replaced by?
The German Reichsmark, probably, as the key currency, at least within the massive German economic zone. Any international institutions left would just serve German interests. The whole global financial system becomes a tool for them.
And trade. You mentioned Germany setting up this Großraumwirtschaft.
Yeah, a large space economy.
Right.
But it's not about mutual benefit. It's exploitative. colonial, really.
How so?
It's designed purely to funnel resources, raw materials, cheap labor from all the conquered territories straight back to Germany to fuel their industry, their military.
So other economies just stagnate.
Or worse. Exactly. They exist only to serve the German machine. It's systematic plunder replacing trade. Germany might see some short-term gain, but it's built on repression, instability, not sustainable.
And things like the Marshall Plan, aid to rebuild after the war. That just doesn't happen.
Not a chance. The sources are clear on that. That vital lifeline for European recovery. Gone. Subjugated nations stay subjugated, economically too.
It's such a stark contrast to what actually happened. Germany's own post-war Wirtschaftswunder, the economic miracle.
Right, driven by people like Gerhard, Eucken, embracing free markets and new currency. That whole path towards sustainable, more inclusive growth, it just wouldn't exist under a victorious Nazi regime. It'd be exploitation, breeding resentment.
Okay, so an economy basically rigged for Germany. What about technology innovation? Does that just grind to a halt, or does it accelerate in some areas?
Well, that's one of the paradoxes the sources highlight. In certain fields, especially military tech, you'd likely see acceleration. Jet fighters, for instance. The Messerschmitt Me 262 was already flying. Development might have gone even faster, maybe even influencing civilian air travel much sooner, though probably still focused on military dominance.
And rockets, the V2 program.
Exactly. Wernher von Braun's work. That could have pushed German space efforts way ahead of where the U.S. was by the 60s. Think ICBMs, military spy satellites, a space race dominated by Germany.
But there's a flip side, right? Civilian tech.
Yeah, that's where stagnation seems likely. The sources point to things like silicon transistors. Minimal investment there.
Which could delay the computer revolution.
By decades, potentially. Why? Well, partly because many key scientists, often Jewish, wouldn't have been able to contribute, having fled or been killed.
And there was also that suppression of certain science itself.
Right. Theories labeled Jewish physics, like quantum mechanics, actively suppressed. Imagine the impact on generations of scientists taught under that ideology. It actively harms progress when ideology trumps inquiry.
So even German pioneers like Konrad Zuse, his early computers.
Well, Zuse's work was impressive, no doubt. Maybe he founds a computer company. But the sources suggest its applications would likely stay confined. Military calculations, state administration, not the personal computer revolution we saw.
And you can't ignore the moral dimension here.
Absolutely not. That's crucial. Those V2 rockets, built with horrific slave labor in places like the Mittelwerk tunnels.
Concentration camp labor.
Unspeakable suffering. And the Nazi medical experiments, whatever knowledge might have been claimed, came at an abominable human cost. It taints any supposed advancement.
A really dark foundation for any progress. Okay, switching gears slightly, but related to control, culture, and society. Propaganda becomes global, right? Goebbels' methods.
Oh, Clyde everywhere, yeah. The sources mention things like playing cards with Nazi faces, those fake documentaries like The Eternal Jew spreading hate.
Even using places like Theresienstadt as a propaganda front to fool organizations like the Red Cross.
Exactly. Constant manipulation, distorting reality on a global scale. It's terrifying to contemplate.
And German language, German culture, they'd become dominant.
Through force, yes. Education systems completely overhauled by the propaganda ministry. Curricula pushing racial science, Nazi geopolitics, indoctrination from childhood.
Like those hateful children's books, The Poisonous Mushroom, and the Hitler Youth becoming a global model.
Precisely. Promoting extreme nationalism, Aryan supremacy, everywhere. You'd see a deliberate homogenization, wiping out cultural diversity.
So art, music, literature, heavily censored.
Oh, absolutely. Think of the degenerate art exhibitions condemning modern art. Jazz band. Works by Jewish artists forbidden. Anything not fitting the narrow Nazi ideal would be suppressed. A culturally barren world in many ways.
Let's drill down into the impact on specific places and people. Indonesia, for instance, under Japanese control.
Yes, according to the sources. As Germany's ally, Japan would keep its grip on Asia. So Indonesian independence likely wouldn't have happened then.
And Japanese culture, language, would have become deeply embedded.
You'd expect so, yeah. A forced assimilation, potentially eroding local traditions and identity over time. A very different path for Indonesia.
And then, the impact on the Jewish people and the potential state of Israel. The sources here are unequivocal.
They confirmed the worst fears. The Holocaust wouldn't have stopped. 6 million lives lost was horrific enough, but it would have continued, expanded.
Systematically across all of Nazi-controlled Europe.
And potentially beyond, into the Mediterranean, North Africa, wherever Nazi influence reached. The final solution implemented on an even wider scale.
So the Zionist movement crushed.
Brutally. The sources are clear. The State of Israel simply would not exist in this timeline. Any UN plans for partition, ignored, irrelevant.
Jewish survivors, where would they be?
Hiding. Maybe in forced assimilation camps, a scattered, terrified diaspora, Hebrew language likely banned, Jerusalem itself, potentially subject to Aryanization. It's awful to think about. And that bizarre Madagascar plan the Nazis had.
To ship all European Jews to Madagascar.
Oh, wait.
At a giant prison island.
Yeah. In this nightmare scenario, that might have actually been attempted. It's just horrifying to contrast with actual history.
Even with all the complexities and conflicts that did follow Israel's formation in 1948, the Nakba, the wars, the ongoing situation now in Gaza.
Right. The reality is complex and often tragic. But the absolute systematic extermination envisioned by the Nazis, its prevention by Allied victory, marks a fundamental difference in the world we inherited. The defeat of Germany changed everything for the Jewish people